How can we explore world religions without sinking too deeply into Christian supremacist biases? Or, for that matter, without sinking too deeply into secularist supremacist biases? I'm going to outline two tools for exploring world religions. Both these tools do some things well, but as is true of all tools, they do not do everything well. As is true of all tools, if you use these tools wisely and well for the purposes for which they were designed, you should get some good results. Just be sure that you always wear your safety glasses and other protective equipment. The first tool comes from a book by Ninian Smart, a book titled Dimensions of the Sacred, An Anatomy of the World's Beliefs. I don't know about you, but that subtitle makes me immediately wary. Smart seems to equate religions with beliefs. Therefore, we are immediately aware that Smart has a definite point of view. Specifically, he is quite definitely in the Euro-American tradition of scholarship. That doesn't mean that we should dismiss Ninian Smart's book. Rather, this means we can be pretty sure that we know what his point of view is. Since we're assuming that there is no view from nowhere, we definitely want to know what his point of view is. And in fact, Ninian Smart's point of view is pretty close to my own. I'm a product of Euro-American white culture. As a Unitarian Universalist, I would characterize myself as based in a post-Christian religion. And while it's important to me that Unitarian Universalism is post-Christian, it's also undeniable that it's post-Christian. Then, too, in the introduction to his book, Smart talks about wanting to serve as a, quote, counterpoise to cultural tribalism, close quote. In light of the destructive cultural tribalism that exists in the United States politics today, I most definitely want to serve as a counterpoint to cultural tribalism. Smart also talks about wanting to, quote, raise fruitful questions for contemplation by religions and more generally by worldviews, close quote. And indeed, that's a goal of mine, too. One reason to explore other religions is to help oneself better understand one's own religion. Smart suggests that we can explore 7 different dimensions of religion. In the Euro-American tradition, we tend to focus on belief and doctrine, and that is in fact the first dimension of religion that Smart looks at. But Smart goes on to describe 6 other equally interesting dimensions of religion. Second dimension, the ritual dimension. What are the rituals that are characteristic of a particular religious tradition? Protestant Christians in Europe and North America gather each week on Sunday morning to sit quietly in groups and listen to someone speaking on the subject of doctrine. Protestant Christians engage in other rituals as well, but this is the most frequent and most common one. Third dimension, the mythic or narrative dimension. What are the stories that a religion tells? Hindus, for example, are likely to be more or less familiar with the Mahabharata, the epic story of the battle between the Kauravas and the Pandavas. Fourth dimension, the experiential and emotional dimension. What are the experiences and the feelings that people experience who are a part of this religious tradition? When Sikhs come together to worship, for example, one of the central things they experience is singing together hymns that were composed by Guru Nanak, the founder of Sikhism. And the experience of singing those ancient hymns has associated with it feelings and emotions. Fifth dimension, the ethical and legal dimension. What are the rules for conduct which are a part of this religion? My friend, the Reformed Jewish rabbi, follows a number of religious rules, including keeping kosher, observing rules pertaining to the Sabbath, and so forth. Sixth dimension, the social dimension. What are the social networks and structures that characterize this religion? One of the social structures that characterizes Tibetan Buddhism is the lineage that any given religious leader or teacher has, a lineage that may stretch back many generations into the past. On a broader scale, around the Mediterranean Sea during the medieval period, 2 great social groupings, Christendom and the Islamic Caliphates, came into contact. Seventh dimension, the material dimension. What parts of the physical world relate to this religion? This can include buildings used for worship, works of art, special clothing that is worn, burial grounds, books, and so on. Secularism in the United States has a rich material culture, including the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., Mount Rushmore, and the painting of Washington crossing the Delaware River. So to review, the 7 dimensions of religion are belief and doctrine, number 1. Number 2, ritual. 3, myth and narrative. 4, experience and emotion. 5, ethics and laws. 6, social aspects. And 7, material culture. I find Ninian Smart's 7 dimensions of religion an especially useful tool in the classroom. When I teach world religions to middle schoolers, they tend to focus on belief, because Western culture tells them over and over again that religion is all about belief, is only about belief. So they're constantly asking, what does this or that religion believe? So instead, I try to focus the middle schoolers' attention on 3 other dimensions of religion: experience and emotion, social structures, and material culture. Thus, I can move them out of the dominant and incorrect assumption that religion is all about belief. Furthermore, I can help them become more sensitive to how other cultures, other worldviews, are really quite different from their own, operating under different sets of assumptions. So that's the first tool that I'm going to outline for exploring world religions, the 7 dimensions of religion as set forth by Ninian Smart. The second tool for exploring world religions is equally fun, but it is simpler to use. Back in the 1990s, Diana Eck, a professor at Harvard University who studied religions of India, discovered that some of the religions that she was flying to India to study existed just a short drive from her office at Harvard. She began to mobilize her students to seek out and document all the different religious groups in the Boston area. She and her students soon discovered that an astonishing number of the major world religions were represented in the Boston area: Afro-Caribbean religions, Baha'i Buddhism, Confucianism, Taoism, Christianity, Hinduism, Islam, Judaism, Sikhism, Zoroastrianism, and so on. So one way to explore religion that Diana Eck had figured out is to simply look for religious communities near where you live. I did this myself in my old neighborhood in San Mateo, and within a 20-minute walk I found several Christian churches, a Hindu temple, a Buddhist temple, an Islamic masjid, and a Jewish synagogue. So this may seem to be a very superficial way to explore religion, since all you're doing is locating where a religious group meets. But I found it stretched my understanding of who my neighbors were, and I began to better understand the diversity of where I live, not just racial and economic diversity, but diversity of culture and of worldview. I also found that I couldn't just do a web search for nearby religions. Some of these religious groups have websites in a language other than English, so they don't come up when I type in English search terms. And some of them prefer not to have websites at all, or prefer to remain under radar. The only way I found some of these groups was to drive around looking for them, or better yet, though more time-consuming, getting out and walking, because some of them are easy to miss from a car. The next step, of course, is to go out and actually visit some of these neighboring religions. And Diana Eck did some of that, and many people who study religions do that. And that's also what we do with our middle schoolers. We pay visits to our neighboring religious groups. A direct experience of other religions through visiting one of their meetings or worship services further breaks us out of the complacency that comes with merely studying religious beliefs, because it quickly becomes obvious that there's much more to religion than belief. A direct experience of other religious groups also makes us better world citizens, as we learn how to make such visits politely, as we learn the etiquette of making such visits. A direct experience of other religions can also help us to learn more about who we are as religious persons, if we remain humble and don't go on these visits with the assumption that our religious viewpoint is the best one, and that includes secularists too. Such humility, however, is very difficult for two main groups in the United States: white Christian evangelicals on the one hand, and secularists on the other hand. You might notice that each of these groups is a dominant voice in one of the two United States political parties. Neither of these groups has much humility. Both of these groups proselytize aggressively, and both these groups want to make over the United States in their image. I hope you will want to be like neither of these two groups. Instead, I propose that we Unitarian Universalists engage in an open-minded and open-hearted exploration of world religions. I propose we use the study of world religions as a way to de-center our own experience, to try to get inside the experience of other worldviews. This, I believe, will ultimately make us better world citizens. And having more good world citizens will, I hope, lead to a more peaceful world.